NFL Blitz was a legendary series. Instead of competing with NFL 2K Madden and NFL Game Day by delivering authentic simulation gameplay, the classic Blitz titles threw authenticity out the window and created a 7-on-7 over-the-top arcade game that, for many, was the more enjoyable and fun football game of its era. The NFL has always been a violent game, full of crushing hits and injuries, and NFL Blitz, specifically Blitz 2000, became a cult classic by going all in with over-the-top tackles and a preference towards big plays. As you probably know, if you're a regular viewer of this channel, in 2005 EA and the NFL signed an exclusive deal, and Madden has been the only NFL game in town ever since. Midway, the creators of NFL Blitz, didn't stop their series, however, and made two unlicensed Blitz titles, Blitz the League and Blitz the League 2. Full of even more over-the-top tackles, violent injury animations, and even introduced PEDs and an M rating. These titles I've mentioned so far are relatively celebrated and well-known in the sports gaming landscape. But in between those classics, there was an NFL Blitz title that very few talk about today. That's NFL Blitz Pro. Unlike the other Blitz titles, Blitz Pro tried to focus on delivering a more simulation-style product, now with 11-on-11 action and a franchise mode, while also retaining that over-the-top action Midway had established with previous Blitz titles. It ended up being a complete failure, and was the last Blitz title until Blitz the League, and the last NFL licensed Blitz title until EA bought Midway and released a half-baked reboot of NFL Blitz as a digital-only download in 2012. Attempting to do two things at once is a bold move. How actually was this more realistic Blitz title? How deep were the game modes? Does it seem better today knowing just how bad the NFL video game scene would get in the coming decades? Let's take a deeper look at NFL Blitz Pro, the forgotten NFL Blitz game. So how did we end up with a more realistic NFL Blitz? By the early 2000s, the NFL had started clamping down on Blitz's trademark violence. According to Midway's CEO David Zucker, the NFL had become more restrictive in what they'd allow, specifically requesting a more realistic and less cartoonish direction for the game. They were particularly bothered by the late hits and body slams that made Blitz famous in the first place, but made the NFL game seem violent. Of course, football is a violent sport, but the NFL is a corporate league looking to avoid liability. Making matters worse, Mark Turmel, one of the original creators of NFL Blitz, had left the franchise to work on NBA Ballers, a great game by the way. Midway brought in new developers with simulation sports experience to complement their arcade team, hoping to create something fresh that wouldn't upset the NFL while still feeling like NFL Blitz. Midway's VP of Sports at the time, John Dean, tried to downplay the NFL's influence, claiming that they had already been doing this research for a number of years to evolve the series. He insisted that Blitz Pro wasn't made to directly compete with Madden or NFL 2K, but to remain at the entertainment end of the spectrum. But the common consensus at the time was that this was a clear reaction to NFL pressure. They just didn't want to admit it. With this identity crisis baked in from the start, Blitz Pro was released in late 2003 for the PS2, Xbox, and GameCube. The title changed from the usual naming pattern. It wasn't called Blitz 04, which signaled Midway's attempt to rebrand the series as something more substantial. Instead, it would be the last NFL licensed Blitz game Midway would ever make. The most obvious change in Blitz Pro is the move from 7-on-7 football to 11-on-11 football. The game also got rid of the 30-yard first downs for the standard 10-yard first downs. At first glance, it looks like any other football game from this era, which was the problem. Despite leaning towards making a sim game, Blitz Pro stubbornly refused to fully commit to it. There were still no penalties whatsoever. You could still nail quarterbacks after the whistle, though the animations were slightly toned down. Players could still catch fire after making consecutive big plays. It's like Midway was trying to make a serious NFL game without the serious rules. The gameplay sits awkwardly between arcade and sim, kind of like modern Madden, right? Running the ball was more realistic than in previous Blitz titles, and there were a lot more running plays. The impact player system let you control a specific player and assign them individual actions before the snap. This was basically an early hot route feature. According to the game's marketing, the AI was supposedly improved to be less extreme. In classic Blitz games, defenders would basically intercept everything. But the newer Blitz Pro's AI was still pretty dumb by simulation standards. CPU teams will still make boneheaded play choices like unnecessary fourth down attempts, showing that underneath the new simulation-style surface, this was still the exact same old NFL Blitz game at heart, but it was missing its soul. Honestly, it's not bad if you play it as a faster version of PS2 Madden with no rules, but it fails to stand out in any direction. It's not crazy enough for Blitz fans, but it's not sim enough for sim fans. For a game from 2003, Blitz Pro does have decent visuals. The player models look similar to previous Blitz titles, which is both good and bad. They're distinctive, but they were starting to look a bit dated by 03. The Xbox version ran at a higher resolution and looked the sharpest, while the PS2 and GameCube versions were a bit less crisp, but basically still the same game. The color commentator Gator Jones provides trash-talking banter that tries to keep some of that old Blitz personality. It's occasionally funny, but very repetitive. There aren't enough lines, so you'll hear the same jokes constantly. Cutscenes showing coaches and players reacting to plays were a new addition for presentation, but they're often contextually wrong. You'll see a coach celebrating after failing on fourth down. It's jarring, specifically if you're trying to take the game seriously, but it is from 2003, and the latest Madden titles have the same issues. Kinda funny. Game mode variety and depth is where NFL Blitz Pro actually tried to distinguish itself. For the first time ever, NFL Blitz had a legitimate franchise mode. You could manage rosters, sign free agents, trade players, and draft rookies each offseason, going many seasons deep. You even earned money after games to upgrade player attributes. But all of that is pretty standard stuff. The franchise mode was incredibly shallow when compared directly to Madden 04 or ESPN NFL 2K4. The economy was harsh, signing good free agents was way too expensive, and upgraded players would often retire after just a season or two, limiting long-term progress. It's a shallow first attempt at a franchise mode. The PS2 version did have online play, a first for the series. Midway even incorporated real-time weather data, so if you played an online game in Chicago, the game would check the actual weather in Chicago and make it rain or snow accordingly. That's pretty crazy for 2003. Unfortunately, the Xbox version shipped without Xbox Live support, and the GameCube had no online functionality at all, outside of Phantasy Star Online, of course. To keep some of the Blitz craziness alive, they included a Blitz shop with unlockables. This was back when shops in video games had low prices using in-game currency. There were no microtransactions, it was just for fun. This is probably the coolest part of the game and the only reason worth playing it today. You could spend credits on fantasy teams, which were really unique, such as this team of hot dogs. It's pretty sick throwing dimes with Meaty Dog and catching touchdowns with Tube Steak. There were also additional stadiums to unlock and novelty game modes like Butterfingers, where every hit causes a fumble, or All or Nothing, where you must score a touchdown within 4 downs or you turn the ball over. It was pretty similar to the old Madden cards. There was even a classic Blitz mode as an unlockable, but it didn't actually play much like the original game, serving only to highlight how much had changed for the worse. The Blitz shop was pretty cool and gave the game some character, but it couldn't save Blitz Pro from being a commercial failure. NFL Blitz Pro is a victim of an identity crisis. It wanted to please the NFL with more realism while keeping Blitz fans happy with arcade-leaning gameplay and animations. The result satisfied neither. Critics gave it middling scores at best, and it only sold about 130,000 copies total, a severe drop from the million-plus sales of earlier Blitz games. This commercial failure led Midway to an ironic decision. They abandoned the NFL license entirely and went in the complete opposite direction with Blitz the League in 2005. That game leaned into extreme violence, drug use, and a gritty story campaign. Freed from NFL constraints, Midway made the game they actually wanted to make, and it sold better than Blitz Pro within its first 2 weeks. But looking back at Blitz Pro today, it feels like a fascinating experiment rather than an outright disaster. Its attempt to bridge arcade and simulation gameplay was ahead of its time in some ways. Modern sports games all try to walk that line to some degree, especially as they cater more towards competitive online gameplay while maintaining exclusive simulation licenses. I can't help but wonder if Blitz Pro might have found its audience today, when sports gamers are desperate for any alternative to EA's monopoly. A faster, looser, more arcade-inspired NFL game with no penalties but full teams? That actually sounds kind of refreshing compared to another year of stale Madden. Competition was booming in those early 2000s. But back in 03, with Madden 04 breaking sales records and ESPN NFL 2K4 delivering an incredible simulation experience, there was no room for a confused half measure like Blitz Pro. It remains the forgotten chapter in the Blitz saga, overshadowed by its more confident and focused siblings, although its failures might sound familiar to those fed up with modern-day Madden. It's a life lesson. You can't please everyone. Listen to your gut and play to your strengths. You know, be yourself. Had Midway fully committed to either the arcade roots or a true simulation experience, NFL Blitz Pro might be remembered more fondly. Instead, it's a forgotten footnote in sports gaming history, a reminder that sometimes trying to please everyone ends up pleasing no one. Thanks for watching.